You know, there is something almost poetic about Kenyan politics. Not poetic in the romantic sense, no, but in the way it looks back on itself, like a chorus we've heard before, just sung by a different voice, or sometimes the very same voice. In 2022 at Chatham House, then presidential candidate William Ruto offered what sounded like a principled critique of governance in Kenya. He warned against what he called a mongrel system, where the opposition sits in government and government behaves like the opposition. A blurring of lines so complete that accountability itself becomes the casualty. It was a compelling argument, clean, almost surgical. And then back home, in the middle of a fuel crisis at the time triggered in part by the Russia-Ukraine war, the same man, then Deputy President, stood before Kenyans and did something even more striking. He criticized the very government he served in for how they handled that crisis. And when asked by a journalist about this irony, he blamed it on the form of government at the time.
Kiru Yanet, you don't live in Kenya. I mean, honestly. You know as much as I do the situation in Kenya. You know that what was government is now like the opposition, and what was the opposition is now behaving like it is government. It is that confusion that has visited on the people of Kenya an accountability problem, because there are no more clear lines between the people in the opposition and the people in government, because greedy people who are supposed to be discharging their responsibility on the other side of government, because of greed, decided to come and become cartels and barons in government. So the responsibility we are discharging here is because we believe in the citizenship of our republic. This is somebody else's responsibility, but we are forced to do it because we have the interests of the nation at heart, and we want the right thing to happen in Kenya. We would have chosen to keep quiet.
Same crisis, same plot. Government in opposition, opposition in government. Exactly 4 years ago, he told us this is exactly what erodes accountability. This blurring of lines, this mongrel arrangement where no one quite owns responsibility. 4 years later, we're back here again. Same sector, same questions, same confusion. Only this time, the mongrel government is not an inheritance. It is a creation, his creation. And yet, the explanations keep shifting. Just this week, the president told Kenyans that fuel prices here are higher than in our East African neighbors because Kenya is now a middle-income country. A new rationale, a different frame. But it raises a familiar question. If the problem is structural, if it is about who we are as an economy, then what exactly were we being told in 2022? Because back then, the issue was governance, cartels, failure of leadership. Now it is status, classification, economic identity. So, which is it? And then there is the theater of accountability. Just weeks ago, there were dramatic arrests of senior officials in the energy sector, presented as a sign that action was finally being taken, that the system was working. But nearly 20 days later, there's little clarity, no visible movement towards prosecution. No sense of urgency, just silence. And in that silence, a pattern emerges. The spectacle of accountability is swift. The substance of accountability is slow. So I wonder today, would he still argue that the problem is this blurring of lines, this shifting of responsibility? Or has the explanation changed again? Is it still governance, or is it geopolitics? Or now perhaps our status as a middle-income country? Who exactly is accountable today? Perhaps the real issue isn't the crisis itself, but the convenience with which explanations change. The ease with which yesterday's diagnosis is abandoned for today's justification. And in that quiet shift, accountability doesn't just weaken, it disappears. That's my take.